Who is Ventor? Ventor was founded in 2004. It was a startup company backed by VCs. Our mission was to develop innovative product solutions for valvular heart disease. We were very focused. We had one specific flagship product, which was the transcatheter aortic valve replacement, and you'll hear more about it in a minute. And we knew what our expertise were. We were combining engineering expertise with strong clinical acumen. We retained all of our competencies in-house. We didn't do any manufacturing offshore, so we had R&D, manufacturing, IP, QA, clinical, etc. in-house at Ventor in our Israeli facility. As I said, very focused and efficient, and eventually sold the company to Medtronic in 2009. You all know what an aortic disease is. The nice thing about aortic disease is there's a specific guidelines of the AHA of when you should intervene. So again, there's a clear indication for an intervention, and that makes it a very interesting and intriguing solution for a medical device company. So again, on the left-hand side, you can see a healthy valve. On the right-hand side, the stenotic valve. And once you develop a severe aortic stenosis, there's a clear indication for intervention. Also, the pathophysiology of this disease makes it especially interesting for a solution, given you have a very long latent period, and after that long latent period, once symptoms occur, then that's where you deteriorate, or the patient deteriorates. So it makes it, for a company, bring in a new device, it makes it very interesting. If you could, again, change obviously this slope, then you could obviously add clinical value, economical value for your customers, and eventually bring in a breakthrough product. So again, when we started off the company back in 2004, everybody talked about minimal invasive procedures. This was a surgical heart procedure, which was the golden standard procedure for replacing the aortic valve. And it was very easy coming in and saying, okay, we have a minimal invasive procedure to replace the valve. We were not first to market, which sometimes is an advantage. So we were second or third to market after PVT and after core valve, and that makes it very interesting and very compelling for us when we face the VCs. Obviously, the question that we always got was, is there a true unmet need? And clearly, as you could see over here, various articles that were published, between 30 to 60% of the patients who should be treated for severe aortic stenosis are actually not treated in any way, not medically, not surgically. And the reason is some of them are going underdiagnosed, some of them are not even referred by the cardiologist to the cardiac surgeon, some of them are referred to the cardiac surgeon, but the cardiac surgeon refuses to treat them. So there's a clearly, as I showed you before, there's a clear indication for intervention, there's a clear market need. And again, as you look at the numbers, and that's always important, that it was obvious to us that this is going to be a huge market, $1 billion in 2014, growing to above $3 billion in 2019. So again, a very, very significant market opportunity. So we came up with a Ventor design. We were not first to market, we were second to market. It was very important for us to make sure we bring in an innovative product which is going to be a clear differentiator. We wanted that to be safe, quick, and intuitive. We wanted to make sure it has optimal hemodynamic performance and a design that ensures long-term durability. And like in many other products, you'll find out that the solution is actually one which is being used and applied in other technologies. So this solution, the Venturi tube principle, is the basic solution of the valve that we applied. This solution is used in jet engines, it's used in oil pipelines, and we applied that solution that was, again, published in 1957 for our advantage for a medical device, a heart valve. So basically what you have over here is, as flow goes through a restricted orifice, what happens is you lose a head flow. I mean, you basically lose about 35% of your pressure. If, on the other hand, that flows goes through a gradual expansion, then you eliminate turbulence, and then what you lose is you only lose 15% of the pressure. And again, this was already applied, as I said before. You all, when you came into Israel, you flew on a jet engine. This is already applied for years and years in the jet engines. What we did is we took that technology and we applied that for a medical device, for a heart valve prosthesis. So again, this is the conventional design valve on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, you could see the Ventor design. Basically, again, gradual expansion, laminar flow, and then minimizing pressure gradient. And obviously what we did is we compared that to other valves that were in the marketplace. And as you could see over here, we took a Hancock 21, which is an internal diameter of 18 millimeters, a Perimount Edwards valve, again 18 millimeters, and an engager valve, a Ventor valve, which has a lower internal diameter. And despite the fact that it has a lower internal diameter, we got lower pressure gradients and higher effective orifice area. It's a very easy demonstration to do in the lab. So the Engager product is a transcatheter AVR bioprosthesis, aortic valve replacement. We went for a transepical approach, and I'll talk about it. Why did we go for that approach a little later? Bovine pericardial, and it emulates robust surgical valve design. We were looking at this market, specifically looking at a surgical market, applying this product and working with the cardiac surgeons. And we wanted to make sure that if we're working with the cardiac surgeons, this product is going to be competitive with the traditional open heart surgery solution with a surgical valve. Last thing, it has a support frame over here, 3 support arms, which facilitate intuitive and accurate deployment, and an anatomical positioning and axial fixation. So just walking you through a procedure. This is a implantation of an Engager 26 valve. We have 3 sizes in a 85-year-old patient post-CABG. And what you do is, as we developed the product, we also learned that you don't only need to develop the product, you also need to develop the procedure. So you start off with a balloon valvuloplasty, as you see over here. You have your pigtail inserted over here. Then you advance the delivery system, again, in this case, through the transepical approach, until the retainer. There's a retainer down here, is about the position of the pigtail, which means you're above the aortic valve leaflet, native leaflets. At that point, you verify the supravalvular support arm position. You can see the support arms over here, the radiopaque, and then you gradually release the support arm. So unlike competitive products over here, you don't only rely on imaging, you also rely on tactile feedback. So as you withdraw the delivery stem, you could actually feel, the clinician could actually feel that the support arms are sitting in the base of the sinuses. And once he feels that they're sitting in the base of the sinuses, then he could completely uncover the commissural post and release the valve for full valve deployment. So again, as I said before, I think we underestimated the complexity of the procedure. We were initially focusing on developing the valve itself. And as you develop the valve and go through animal procedure, then cadaver procedure, and eventually human, I mean, you also need to develop the procedure itself. A little bit about our history, the history of the company, and going a little bit to the business side. Obviously, as I said before, company was founded in 2004, was founded basically based on a provisional patent. And with that provisional patent, again, you file a provisional patent for $150 with the U.S. Patent Office, and with that we went out and raised cash. So we went to various VCs and eventually ended up with a local VC, Pitango, over here, which gave us $500,000 for basically a provisional patent. And then we slowly but steadily started to develop the product and went through animal trials. We very early started developing relationship with various strategic partners, and Medtronic was one of them. And we introduced the company to Medtronic back in 2006. Got our patent approved, full patent approved in 2007. Had meetings with the FDA, several meetings with the FDA. Went through Generation 1 design freeze. Established a solid manufacturing process. As I said before, while you see other companies going offshore, we did that at Ventor, locally in our facility. V&V testing, and then went into our round 2 and round C. And in this time, round C, we brought in Medtronic as a participant, as an investor. Medtronic didn't have any rights no specific rights in the company. They were an investor like any other investor, but it was extremely important for us, again, to develop those solid relationships with Medtronic. And eventually, as you'll see later on, Medtronic, when they stepped in and acquired the company, they didn't only acquire the company because of the technology. I think they felt very, very comfortable with the management team in-house. They felt very, very comfortable with the R&D team. And it's always a question that you ask yourself, okay, how early do I expose myself? How early do I open the kimono to those strategic companies? And I think at the end of the day, most of the strategic companies have a high integrity. They're not out there to steal your technology. Obviously, it's a risk, but they have a high integrity. And for them to develop those relationships with the company early on, I think was material. First man in 2008, and that's where we proved that the product was safe and feasible, and then eventually the company was acquired by Medtronic. Some of the things that as we went and developed that product, again, we've learned that it's a multidisciplinary therapy. It was an emerging trend of CV or cardiovascular therapies involving multiple specialties. And I think, again, as I said before, we may have underestimated how much we need to work not only with the cardiac surgeons, but also with the interventional cardiologists, with the echocardiographists, with the anesthesiologists. and with a variety of clinicians that were involved in the procedure. Again, a very complex procedure. This has obviously implications for hospital workflow, patient screening, market development, training and education. So again, as you develop that product, you need to think not only of the specific product itself, but also about a variety of other aspects that involves, again, a variety of specialties in the hospital. So in 2009, when Medtronic acquired us on the eve of the acquisition, Medtronic was a player in surgical valve, but not a leading player, and Medtronic basically had no position in TAVI. Medtronic announces on the eve of the acquisition they'll acquire both Ventor and CoreValve. And again, Ventor had a solution for a transepical approach. CoreValve had an approved product, CE mark approved product for the transfemoral approach. And together those acquisitions really represented Medtronic's commitment to staying at the cutting edge of cardiovascular medicine. Interestingly, in addition to the acquisition of Medtronic, Medtronic also announced that their intention to cultivate Medtronic Ventor as an innovation center. And as I said before, again, those relationships early on, when Medtronic stepped in and said, we want to acquire Ventor, not only because of the product, but we want to acquire the company as well, because of the people that are sitting in the company, and we want to turn Medtronic Ventor into an innovation center. So those relationships were extremely important. When we were approaching the market back in 2004, there were multiple companies that were looking for a transfemoral solution. So again, CoreValve, PVT, Edwards, Direct Flow, there were numerous Sadra, numerous other companies looking for a transfemoral solution, but there were maybe one or two companies looking for a transepical solution. So while, excuse my French, transepical might be less sexy, again, there were less companies looking at that solution. I think from our perspective, that showed to be an advantage. So when Medtronic again acquired us, it made their commitment to engage both the cardiologist and the surgeon as customers, allows access to TCV aortic patients and provides a hedge. Again, we don't care, Medtronic doesn't care if it's going to go by the transfemoral approach or by the transepical approach. Medtronic has a solution for both those procedures. So what do I think can be learned from this Ventor case? One is you need to understand your strengths and limitation. We very early knew that our strengths, our main competencies are around research and clinical. I remember very often I used to get questions from our investors. Okay, Guy, when are you moving as CEO? When are you moving to the United States? When are you opening a facility in the United States? When are you starting to go out with PRs? When are you having a website? We were very, very focused in those early days on research and clinical value. I think it was very obvious for us as this local Israeli company, it's going to be difficult to penetrate this big market. There's basically three companies operating in the valve industry. It's Edwards, Medtronic, and St. Jude Medical. We knew very early on this is going to be, for an Israeli company, extremely difficult to open a distribution channel in the United States, regardless if we're local or if we move our headquarters to the United States. So you need to realize that. I think with all due respect to companies which want to go the whole 9 yards for full commercialization, I mean, understand your limitation. That's an oligopoly, very high barriers of entry, and again, we understood that early on. When you develop a product, obviously you need to make sure you have a breakthrough technology. We looked at a substantial market, again, above $1 billion. I think it's important. If it's a $200 million market, you know what, I'm not sure I'm going to open a company for a $200 million market. There's going to be your company, there's going to be probably another dozen companies. Needless to say, it needs to be an innovative product or an innovative solution. And as I said before, we came with a different approach. Our investors constantly came to us and said, why aren't you going for the transfemoral approach? Yes, we had a transfemoral product. Yes, we had a portfolio of products, but our main focus was on a transepical approach because we knew there's a number of other companies, many other companies looking for a transfemoral solution, and we wanted to come up with a different solution. And as I said before, it's not about the technology. We developed those competencies in-house between regulatory, QA, manufacturing, clinical, etc. And as I said before, when Medtronic came in, they clearly said, we want to acquire the company, but we want to make sure we have those employees stay in the company, stay on board, and move into an innovation center over here locally. So, don't only develop the product, but also think about the entire group and team, because when the strategic company steps in, I mean, they have those big processes. It's a big company, but they'll be very interested in the engineers that develop that startup culture mentality, that they're working very fast, being able to cross those barriers. I mean, those startup engineers are very, very valuable for the big company. Startup culture, extremely important. I mean, the big companies, Medtronic, Edwards, I mean, they're spending so much on R&D. You need, as a startup company, to show efficiencies. I mean, you need to show them value. We burned $8 million as a startup company for 5 years. So between 2004 to 2009, until the company was sold, we burned $8 million. Today at Medtronic Ventor, we have a similar project, similar to the transepical approach. We're burning that amount of money in a single year. And again, approximately the same size of a team. So again, as a startup company, you have to be efficient. And eventually, you know, your investors are there not because of Zionistic reasons, not because you know, they love you. They're looking for a nice return. And again, we showed them a nice return because of that being efficient. They had a multiple of 50, which obviously was very satisfying for them. As I said before, very efficient, very focused. All managers were hands-on. We didn't have any COO. We didn't have any CFO. We didn't have any flashy names, doctors on a scientific board. We had a scientific board, but those scientific board members used to come into Ventor on a weekly basis or maybe on a bi-monthly basis and work with our engineers. So we didn't go out to the TCT showing our community how nice we have those big names on our scientific board members, but besides being on our scientific board members and maybe being on a presentation, not doing a lot, we had our scientific board members, those which were, again, down to earth, working very, very hard with our engineers, and we were very focused, again, focused for the right stage. Early stage company, focused on engineering, no website, no PR, always feels to me very, very strange when I see a company going through the first round of investment and then going out with a PR and then a article in the local Israeli newspaper, Globe, saying, we just founded a company. There's a huge press release with a picture of the CEO. I mean, if somebody thinks that a big company like Medtronic is going to read that newspaper and say, wow, now that we saw that you have an article in the Globe's financial newspaper, we're going to step in and acquire the company. No, that's probably not going to work. So again, I would say, focus your resources where you need to focus it, and for an early stage company, focus it on R&D. And lastly, again, as I said before, numerous times I had my investors and future investors ask me, okay, Guy, when are you moving to the United States? When are you opening an office in the United States? What about your PMA strategy, your regulatory strategy? And I think the big companies, and I know that from Medtronic, I know it from other strategic companies, do value Israel very much. For all of those companies who have a local R&D research, I think being locally over here in Israel is a huge asset, and I wouldn't be so quick, despite your investors asking you when are you moving to the United States, I wouldn't be so quick in moving out of Israel. Again, I think Israel being over here locally is a huge advantage for the company. So with that, I want to thank you and hope you have an enjoyable rest of the day.